Right, so as always, please ask your questions on Slack so that even if the session is over, you can continue the conversation. All right, with that, I am going to go ahead and hand it over to Andrea.
Hey, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. And thank you to the organizers for creating an amazing, inclusive, distributed environment for this conference to happen today. Usually I start off when I'm traveling to speak at a conference saying, I'm enjoying Denver or Boulder, or I'm enjoying this city and the food. And well, today I'm enjoying my home, and I would tell you a tiny bit about it. I live in Lexington, Massachusetts, and if you are at all familiar with the American history and the American Revolutionary War, we are the site of the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and we started off the Revolutionary War. So now you know a little bit about where I am. Hopefully that makes you feel connected. So about me. My name is Andrea Falcone. I'm a software engineer at Google, where I work on Android Jetpack, specifically the infrastructure and tooling side. Before working on Jetpack, I worked on other familiar Android developer tools like Crashlytics, Fastlane, and Firebase. So what is AOSP, and why would anyone want to contribute to it? AOSP is the Android open source project, and that refers to people, processes, source code, all these things that make up Android. We oversee the project and develop the source code as well as the tools and procedures that we use to manage the development of Android software. Contributing to AOSP means improving the Android ecosystem, which is why many of us are here today at this conference, to improve the Android ecosystem. AOSP includes code for the Android platform, or the operating system, Android Studio, Gradle plugins, and Jetpack libraries. I'm going to talk a lot about Jetpack today, so we should familiarize ourselves with it. Jetpack comprises the Android X package libraries. These are explicitly unbundled from platform APIs to help developers write high-quality apps easier. And this includes backwards compatibility and is updated a lot more frequently than the Android platform. Some of you might notice that about every 2 weeks, there's library releases from our side. Jetpack is a great place for external contributors to get started. It's easier because the tooling is more familiar for app developers, and the footprint is smaller. Jetpack uses Gradle and Kotlin to build, and because these are probably pretty familiar to you, I'm going to focus on making Jetpack contributions in this talk. Many of the principles and tooling apply to the Android platform as well, though. Speaking of Gradle and Kotlin, this is a snippet from our Gradle plugin built in Kotlin. If you're not already writing your build scripts or plugins in Kotlin, I highly recommend it. So contributing to open source can mean a lot of different things, and I'm going to show you a few ways that you can play a significant part in AOSP. The process of contributing code is the following. First, you need a bug to fix. Even if you're implementing a new feature, you must file a bug for it. Then, you need to get access to the tools and source code. You'll make, test, and upload the code changes, and I'll walk through these steps in more detail. But before we talk about code, let's talk about contributing bug reports. All bugs, issues, and feature requests are filed using Issue Tracker. You can use Issue Tracker to find a specific bug to fix. For Jetpack, we have what we call a bug bounty list. You can also use it to find known issues. And if you can't find what you're looking for, you can file a great bug. The Android X bounty is an issue tracker hot list of issues that we love help fixing. We're working to add more public bugs to this list as well. This hot list contains feature requests and bugs that anyone could handle with some help. Bug bounties must have a sponsor to provide the background context, code reviews, and educational resources that are required for external contributors to understand and resolve the issue. You can find known issues for given components from the docs page linked at the bottom on this slide about reporting bugs. Starring issues that are important to you is a great way to contribute. Teams use the number of stars to understand the impact that an issue has on their audience and which bugs should be addressed. Filing an accurate bug report is incredibly important. The more details that are available, the better. You can search for the particular component. This might be a feature or a library. Each component can have a different template with the fields that are relevant to it. Please take the time to fill out those questions and provide a sample project if at all possible. This shows that you're serious enough about the bug to spend time on it, which will allow Googlers to also spend time on it. When you're filing a bug, you can look through recent issues to see if someone else has already filed something similar. If so, starring their issue and leaving a comment with any additional details is better than filing a new one. So your biggest contribution to Android and AOSP might be filing the best bugs. And that's okay. If you leave here today and don't ever write a line of code in Android, you will still have contributed in a major way by filing good bugs. Okay, but so how do I code? I'm going to talk specifically about contributing to Jetpack. The Android platform has similar tooling, but Jetpack is definitely more accessible. And that's where I work every day. So referring back to our process, the first thing we need to do after we found a bug to fix is to download the code. But before we can download the code, we have to download a tool called Repo. Repo is a tool that unifies Git repositories, uploads the changes to the Gerrit revision control system that is used for Android development, and automates parts of the workflow. Repo doesn't replace Git, just make it easier to work with Git in the context of Android, which is a lot of different repositories. In most scenarios, you can use Git instead of Repo or mix the commands together. The Repo manifest is a file that tells Repo exactly what to bring into the project. Here, we download all of our dependencies, relying primarily on binaries or pre-builts, so that we can create a consistent build across machines, that's developer machines and CI. The list looks pretty scary, but it's really just a list of other Git projects that we pull in. Unless you're adding additional dependencies, pretend you never saw this. So we have to get Repo. I know this isn't very elegant, but you download Repo by curling this URL and putting the executable in your path. So once we have Repo, we run repo init to get the latest version of Repo that has bug fixes. You specify a URL for the manifest, which dictates where the various repositories included in the source are placed in your working directory. Basically, repo init tells Repo which code to download and where to put it. To download the Android source tree into your working directory, you run repo sync. Init sets it up. Sync actually downloads the code, and every time you would like to pull down the latest code, you run repo sync. The next tool or next command you would run is repo start, and this creates a new branch to begin work on. The repo upload command runs pre-commit hooks and uploads your change to Gerrit. Now that we've downloaded the tool that downloads the code and configured that tool, we can download the code. Repo sync is the tool that we use here. And depending on which repo and branch you're downloading, this could take a while and use up a lot of disk space. Android platform is about 100 gigs. Luckily, the Jetpack or Android X checkout is 6 or 7, which is definitely easier to manage. Because the manifest that I described earlier, each branch is configured with different dependencies, and that's why the Android X master dev branch checkout is smaller than the platform. We don't need as much code. Curious what repo sync actually is doing? Under the hood, it's updating the remote and rebasing your changes on top of it. That's all. And repo sync can be sped up by allowing it to run on more threads, and it's super helpful for the first time that you're downloading code. Most of Android platform and Jetpack development happens in the platform repo, but on different branches. When you initialize repo, you pass the branch parameter to tell it which manifest to use when downloading dependencies. Android X master dev is where all of Jetpack development happens. After the code is downloaded, you can use repo start to make new change. Repo start creates a new branch for your changes and switches you to that branch. At this point, you have the code and you're ready to explore or make changes. And you should do this using Android Studio. Jetpack development prescribes a specific version of Studio that works best with the current code. This version of Studio should be latest and stable. And the command to use the specific version is Gradle W Studio. It will download Android Studio, which we know is a big download, for the very first time that you use it and keep it up to date, even if you already have Studio installed. But it means you're using an up-to-date and compatible version, which means a lot, especially when you're working on libraries that are using cutting-edge language features, things like Compose. Jetpack uses Gradle to build, so you'll notice some similarities around assemble and test from your own app. But we also have a number of custom tasks added by the Android X plugin. Build on server is the main one, which does literally everything. If you're using anything other than a machine with 24 cores and 192 gigs of RAM, you'll soon notice that the build takes a while. It takes up to 60 minutes on my MacBook. It's important to run build on server before committing because you typically find defects here, but run it, grab a snack, maybe a nap before you upload your code. So if build on server takes an hour, is that the only way? Nope. There are per project builds, which are faster than running the tasks in the root. So for example, if you're making a change to ViewPager 2, you can primarily build and test that project or run the tests from Android Studio. The Jetpack repo comes with a number of sample apps which exercise the libraries. This is a good test bed for your changes. It's also possible to test the changes that you're making in your app, test the changes that you're making in your app, which is important because that's a real world example and you're probably fixing a bug which had impacted you. To create the archive, which contains a Maven repo with all of our artifacts, you should run create archive. Then you modify your app to point at the Maven repo that you just created with that previous command, and it lives under Android X build support repo. You can change your build.gradle dependencies to use the latest versions that was built. All right, code is done. We should ship it, right? Not so fast. Unfortunately, before you can upload to Gerrit, you need to establish a password that will identify you with the server, and luckily you only have to do this one time. You must also sign the contributor license agreement for Android. There's a couple of steps, but keep on going. All right, we're finally done with the agreement. All right, maybe now we're ready to ship the code. Let's give it a try. So using git commands, I check to see the code I've changed. I add it, and then I commit it with a message, and then I use repo upload. When you run repo upload, you'll be asked if you want to run the script hooks. You must always run them. The scripts have essential functions such as adding identifiers to commits, and uploading code without the hooks just won't work. Unfortunately, my repo upload failed. When I use repo to upload, the hooks run, and it sees that I haven't added the test stanza to my commit message. So now I'll amend my commit and add a line saying what or how I tested. In this case, I ran Gradle W build on server. It's really important to commit with amend. Amending keeps the change ID, which is a field that was added to the commit message, and that's how Gerrit keeps our patches together. Remote branches are not part of the Gerrit workflow, so you should be working from a single local commit. So you'll notice the commit message is modified here, and that's a change ID that's added. It must remain at the last paragraph of your commit message. So it's pretty common to start coding and commit without having done repo start first. I run into this kind of often. The tools will complain if you try to upload and haven't done repo start first, but it's not too hard to get out of the situation. You just run repo start then, but that creates a new branch that doesn't have your change. So then you grab your change from the ref log and merge it into your new branch that repo started for you. Your last commit is now the tip of tree in the new branch. You can repo upload or continue coding. Great. All right, back to uploading the code. Now I amended to add the test stanza, and I upload again, and it failed again. The pre-commit hooks also include a variety of check style rules, and these rules are codified so that we don't have to enforce them during code review. In this case, I screwed up with the trailing white spaces. Lit will automatically correct many issues for you. All right, once my check style issues are fixed, I can successfully upload the change. If you have multiple branches in progress, it'll ask you to select which one to upload. Repo will give you the link to the CL right there in the output. So let's take a quick pause and talk about some vocabulary. A change list is what you might otherwise know as a pull request. It's also called a change request or a CR. It's just a change or a group of changes to review. A patch set is a version of a change. When you amend your commit for uploading, it makes a new patch set. Pull requests in tools like GitHub are made using one or more distinct commits, which are squashed or merged eventually. With Gerrit, the patch set is squashed when the CL is merged. That's a lot. I know the barrier to entry is high with these tools, so I've got a few things to show off that I think will allow more developers to contribute. We just talked through a pretty lengthy process for contributing, but if you're going to make substantial functional changes, that is the right process to use. However, we've recently introduced a much simpler flow that uses a web editor to make the changes, and I'm really excited to show that off. So in the last few months, we introduced Android Code Search at cs.android.com, which allows you to search and view Android platform and Jetpack code very easily. Searching is pretty fast, finding files and text with your search criteria easily, and it has the ability to show you the Git history and the blame lines for that code. Something that is currently missing, though, is linking to other classes and types, so navigating the code in Android Studio is better in that regard. From Android Code Search, you will see a button that says Edit Code. When you click on that, you'll be taken to something called the Git Source Editor. From the source editor, you can browse the code and make the code changes right there. You can see a diff of what you've just edited. So let's take a look at what it looks like to make a simple change using the Git Source Editor. After clicking on Edit Code, you can go through it and make the code modifications. You can make them in multiple files and include them in the change. When you click on Create Change, you're given a description box. This is your commit message, so be detailed and include the bug stanza and the test stanza that you have fixed and tested. After you submit the change, you'll be taken to Gerrit, where you can start the code review process. There it is. That was definitely easier. So let's take a look at Gerrit. So it's a web-based tool that we use for reviewing code. Regardless of how you created the change via repo or the Git source editor, you'll use Gerrit to have your code reviewed and submitted. Because AOSP houses so many different projects and repositories, you'll see a lot of changes here in Gerrit, also known as Android Review. You can see the repo in the branch that the changes were made against. For Jetpack, this is framework support, and the branch is Android X Master Dev. To the right of that, there's an array of different acronyms. These are the status of the prerequisites for each change. Different projects have different requirements. There's typically some combination of code review, manual verification, open source license checks, and pre-submit testing. When you click on the change, you can view the details, which include the prerequisite checks or labels. You can also see and add reviewers. There's a button for finding the owner to get specific code reviewers, and code reviewers will mark your code pre-submit ready. So let's briefly talk about commit messages. Good commit messages explain what bug they're fixing. Ideally, any discussion on whether something is a bug or is worth fixing should happen in the issue tracker instead of a CL. Provide a detailed description of the change in your commit message. And these are some, the description here is published publicly on AOSP in the repository, so please follow the guidelines for writing specific change list descriptions. Start with a one-line summary, followed by a blank line. This is used by Git and Gerrit for various displays. Starting on the third line, enter your longer description, but please wrap it at 72 characters. And this should focus on what change what issue the change solves and how it solves it. Include a brief note of any assumptions or background information that may be important to another contributor when they work on this feature next year. CLs do need to be assigned to someone so that they'll get reviewed. If you've picked up a bounty bug, you should be able to assign the CL to the bug sponsor for review. Otherwise, you can find the owners using the Find Owners button in Gerrit and select 1 to 2 people to review the CL. Please don't assign more than 2 people. If they aren't the right people, they'll make sure that the right ones get it. Reviewers will indicate that your change is ready for pre-submit testing. They'll review the code and eventually submit the code change for you. We have internal guidelines that help us keep up with reviews that come in. It will be a good problem to have if we have more contributions than we can review. So help us get there. In Gerrit, you should resolve any comments by making the requested changes and marking them done or responding with answers. After you've addressed the comments individually, you need to hit the blue reply button at the top of the comment page, and this will send any draft comments through. When someone's reviewing your CL, they may have many comments. It can be easy to lose track of the comments because the UI is just a running log of everything that's happening with the CL, but you can click on the Comments tab to reveal the comments and filter down to those that haven't been resolved or those that are in draft, so you can clean up everything before it's ready to submit. When the grayed out Submit button appears, you'll know that you've made it. Unfortunately, you don't have the ability to submit the change yourself as an external contributor, and you don't have a great way of knowing that it's actually ready. Double check that the comments are resolved and cross your fingers that the reviewer will submit it very soon. Eventually, if you sit on this page long enough, you'll see that this change has been merged. It's a bit of a long road, but congrats and thank you for the contribution. But wait, there's more. It seems like there could be an easier way to do this, right? This morning, we announced that we on Jetpack are beginning a project to meet developers where they are, and that's GitHub. I've showed you the official process, the lighter weight process, and here's the experimental process. You can now use GitHub to make fixes and send PRs for certain Jetpack libraries. This is an early stage effort, and we hope it'll make it easier to explore, experiment with, and contribute to libraries. So we're starting small and encouraging contributions for Room and Work Manager only. To get started with Jetpack development in GitHub, start by forking the Android X repository, as you would for any other GitHub project, and clone it locally. Most of the local development flow that I've already covered still applies here, including the Gradle Studio command to use a compatible version. While the scope of our GitHub exploration is still very limited, we're encouraging developers to file feature requests and bugs against the Jetpack infrastructure GitHub component in our public issue tracker. So instead of the aforementioned repo instructions, you can use git clone to clone the repository. It's pretty simple to get all the Jetpack library code on your macOS or Linux machine. Please note that building on Windows is still not supported. The team has added some simplified commands that allow you to build and test the Room and Work Manager without needing to build all of Jetpack. So that's great. The pull request and code review model is used in GitHub instead of Gerrit for contributors. So here's an example that shows Yeet making a fix and requesting a review. Armis performs the review on GitHub, and Rahul approves the changes. Then behind the scenes, a process called Capybara mirrors the PR into the AOSP Gerrit, and the bot closes the PR in GitHub once it's been merged into AOSP. GitHub Workflow has enabled us to show the details of running the build, and GitHub build must be successful before the next steps are taken. So you can see that we are running the build on server command here and you can see the line-by-line output for it, which is really great. Once the PR is approved, it's mirrored into AOSP Gerrit, where pre-submit is run and all the usual checks apply. So this that I'm showing is the Gerrit version of the PR from Yeet that I showed moments ago. As an external contributor using GitHub for Room and Work Manager changes, you shouldn't need to interact with this CL at all. Once all of the checks in Gerrit and GitHub pass, your change will be merged into Android X Master Dev and AOSP, and then it's mirrored back into Android X Master Dev and GitHub. Congratulations, you landed your change in AOSP. The process seems a little bit verbose. Hopefully from the contributor side, you're interacting primarily with Git and GitHub, and that's familiar for you. But this process allows us to experiment with the GitHub model without disrupting internal development workflows and accessing our tried and true testing infrastructure and Git internally. I think many folks are pretty excited about this announcement today. We can't wait to hear how it goes for folks. We'd love to get more contributions through this workflow. So it's an early stage effort. We want to make it easier to explore, experiment, and contribute. There's definitely going to be rough edges, but we'd love your feedback on the process. So use the issue tracker and the infrastructure GitHub component to tell us how we can improve. So there are a number of things that aren't great about the contribution workflow. As you can see from the web editor and the GitHub announcement, this is something that's getting attention from our team, and we can continue to do more. Our team acknowledges that there are still problems with the external contributor workflow. Since I've given this talk, we've slowly ticked off some of the problems, and that makes me feel really proud. So being able to search, use a web editor, use GitHub, those things are pretty awesome. There are bugs filed internally, and teams working on fixing many of these remaining issues, though. I'm hoping to be able to announce more in the coming months. Since September 2018, we've had 48 unique external contributors to Android X, and this is up from 30 contributors in February of this year when I grabbed the numbers most recently. In fact, 2020, the number of contributors has been rising this year. I believe it's in part because our tools have improved, but I also think that contributing to AOSP during the pandemic makes a lot of sense. Some of us are finding ourselves with more time on our hands to tackle things we've always wanted to try out. Some of us are in search of a distraction from our day-to-day. And some of us are looking to connect with our community who we can't see in person right now. I hope that whatever the reason you find yourself contributing to AOSP, that you get what you need here. I wanted to add a few resources for you so that you can contribute high quality code to AOSP. In some places, our standards might seem high, but it's important to remember that the code that is part of our libraries and platform impact the productivity of many users and developers. And so we have to make sure that changes are well thought out and tested. So we're really excited to welcome more contributors to the code, and I can't wait to see you there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to need to hit all the buttons, so give me a moment. Buttons. All right, cool. I believe you also posted that link in Slack, right?
Yep, the link to the slides are in Slack.
All right, so then I will not show that slide so that I can see you and your coconut tree bigger.
As I said to Chuki earlier, you have to fake it till you feel it. Sometimes we need to spice up our
brighten up the day. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. So we have a little bit time for questions. So I'm going to jump in and scroll up. And if you have some questions for Andrea, that's the link that you can get to the channel. First of all, I think people are really excited about GitHub. It's like, finally, you are listening.
I was super happy that the announcement landed this morning before my talk, and my talk wasn't yesterday. Timing, thank you.
I was like, how did you pull that off? That was amazing.
Amazing.
All right, cool. All right, so we have a question from Matthew.
All right.
If you're on Slack as well, you may want to read it because it's fairly long.
Okay.
Is there work being done around addressing the current jar hell that exists in the Jetpack libraries? All these tools are great, but trying to use a new feature often breaks and other features due to requiring things like alpha versions, beta versions, etc. And various libraries update at their own rate, which makes this difficult to deal with.
That's great feedback. Not something that I'm directly involved with, but I can certainly poke the people on my team that do look into things like this, and we can try to see if there's anything being done for you.
Cool. All right. Yeah, and then the rest are mostly comments. Like people are excited about contributing to GitHub through GitHub. And Sean just said that he loves the dictionary slides, so that's great. And I was just laughing about copy Spara service.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is great. So.